All right, everyone, thank you for joining us. It is 2 o'clock, so we're going to kick off the webinar here. Just so that you know, this is being recorded so that we're able to share this recording at the end of the session with everyone who replied but was not able to make it. So you will also get a copy of the recording and the slide deck at the end of the session. I do ask that if you are a public viewer joining this call, if you please mute yourself throughout the conversation, and then we can unmute when we're ready to go through the Q&A session at the end. But since it is 2 o'clock, we're going to jump right in. Welcome to the Evolve webinar From Data to Decisions, where we're discussing how to measure, interpret, and apply meaningful marketing metrics. Your presenters today are myself, Shannon Turner, and Jenna Sherrick, our Senior Marketing Manager. I am the partnership strategist here at Evolve, so it is my job to really help find alignment between our potential partners and the capabilities of our team to make sure that we're really striving to always achieve your goals. My background is as a graphic designer, so I used to build websites, create branding, do a bit of marketing, copywriting, all of the things. And now I am more involved with the conversations about those things and just trusting my team to execute their quality skills themselves, doing really fabulous work for our team. And then we also have Jenna Sherrick here, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Jenna Sherrick. I'm the Senior Marketing Manager here at Evolve Systems. My role is really making sure the strategy is sound when anyone enters the company to either go into a marketing retainer or website project. My background is in technical SEO. I'm super excited to walk everyone through this today because it kind of brings me back to my training days. I was fortunate enough right out of college to start off as an assistant and worked my way up to leading a team of over 20 SEO specialists, teaching people how to really take the most out of their data and make sure they're using it for actionable insights. So I can't wait to share my love data with you all.
I will say over the last 2 years that I have spent working with Jenna, the amount of education that she is able to share and her wealth of knowledge is just unmatched. I have learned so much and I've watched our clients' eyes just brighten up. Having someone who is both so skilled and so articulate, she can take all of this complex information and kind of this mess of everything that Google is doing and really break it down in ways that actually make sense and allow us to take action. So today's webinar agenda, we'll be starting off with this introduction, overviewing what we're talking about today. We're going to kick off discussing the user journey and the data points, so really talking about the path that everyone takes, your customers kind of experiencing your brand through conversion, and how we are able to measure data at each of these key points so that Jenna can go into simplifying your data, really looking at quantity versus quality and how we're able to figure out how to generate more leads to your website by balancing these metrics. And then also doing a data analysis of best practices. So Jenna's going to walk through all of the key indicators that we look at when we're measuring our data and how to really interpret those and make sure that you're collecting the right information to look at the right data, and then also how you're able to apply it. Then we'll close with how to access and manage your data. So we'll discuss how you're able to log into the system, how you can create reports, and some of the metrics that you should be looking at. And then we'll close off with a question and answer session where we will let you submit some questions to us in the chat, or for those of you who are able to join us by actually turning off your microphones and asking questions, you will be welcome to do that at that time. So let's dive in. Starting off with the user journey, there is valuable data at every single one of these touch points. So the path that someone takes when they're really requiring some sort of a partnership is, number one, they start with a need. They say, I have a problem, goal, or idea. So it really starts with this kind of emphasis of understanding that you're going to need some sort of an outside resource, some sort of a partner or solution to accomplish whatever it is that you have set forth, whether it's resolving something that is an issue or a roadblock in your company, reaching new heights, reaching new goals, working with even AI or any of these new tools that are coming out. It all starts with the desire or the need. From there, it moves into the recognition of resources. So I have searched for or happened upon a solution that aligns with the problem, goal, or idea that I laid out. So if I am looking for something on a search engine such as Google, doing SEO will be really the important piece at that phase. That's going to make sure that I am then directed to the solution. Otherwise, happening upon it can be something that happens just from being on social media, having an ad delivered, anything of that nature is giving you kind of that recognition of what's available out there to provide that solution that you're looking for. From there, our customers execute the research and qualification phase. I wanted to know all of my options before I'm making a judgment. So I may go on to Google, find a solution right away, click into the website. I may even think it's great and that it's a totally excellent option for me, but I will rarely, if ever, go for the first option I explore without making sure that I'm getting the best deal, the best service, the best partnership available. So customers will oftentimes then go through evaluating your competitors, seeing what else is out there, even possibly looking into, can I do this myself or am I going to require a partnership, and continuing to kind of vet that process that qualifies you as the ideal partner for them. Once they have decided, they've made that judgment, it's time for that conversion action. This is where your customers are saying, I've made a decision and I am ready to purchase. So they are coming into your pipeline as a closed sale. And each of these areas has metrics associated with it where we're able to check out, how is this process going for our company? Are there areas for us to improve in any of these one indication pieces so that we're able to actually have a better user journey workflow that's bringing through leads and conversions for us? So the ultimate question becomes, is your website producing leads? And I'm going to pass it off to Jenna to dive into how we look at the data.
Absolutely. Thank you, Shannon. One of the top reasons I'm fortunate enough to work with our clients is the question of, why isn't my website producing leads and how can we get that faucet turned on? A method I learned really young in my career that I've spent quite a bit of time perfecting is called the quantity versus quality method. What it does is it takes all of your data and it really simplifies it into something that's a really quick process that anyone can do. It doesn't matter where you are at in your career, what industry you're in. If you're looking at a teeny website or a mega website, this will work for all shapes and sizes, which is wonderful. So taking a step back, kind of the beginner, when I talk about quantity metrics, I'm going to be talking about numbers, specifically the number of users that are making it to your website, where quality is really a reflection of how those users are interacting with your website. I like to use the lever analogy because it is truly one or the other. Either leads are not working because you aren't getting enough people to your website, or those users really aren't interacting enough with your website, or they're the wrong users. So we're going to walk through how to go through this whole method to help you determine whether or not you need to start focusing on quantity or quality. Starting with quality is where I always start because this is where I do find the root of most of my problems that I come across. A really simple yet complex topic to cover is users are not going to be valuable to you unless they're qualified, meaning that they're actually interested in your products and services. This might sound like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, but it's not always that crystal clear. For example, I used to work with a client who really sold commercial products, but they ended up getting a ton of residential users to their website. When you saw the amount of users that made it, yet no one was actually converting, it made me really suspicious as to who these users are, what they were doing on the website, and why they weren't converting. After quite a bit of analysis, we did determine we were actually just meeting the wrong user. When you think about commercial users versus residential users, those residential users, for curtains in this case, have a much smaller budget than that commercial user, which is why the website wasn't an effective tool for them. Once we kind of figured this out, we were able to then start attracting a different audience and really get leads converting through that website. So taking a step back again, quality metrics. The quality metrics that I'm going to be talking about today are average session duration, meaning the amount of time people are spending on your website in one session they're there. Engagement rate, which is the percentage of users are taking meaningful actions. This is Google's new metric for bounce rate. They said goodbye to bounce rate. Bounce rate is the percentage of users that land on your website and leave. There's a lot you can talk about bounce rate, but we'll save that for a different conversation. And then the last one is views per user. So this is the amount of pages users are making it to a session. The reason we use these three for quality metrics is we can start to tell a story when you use two at a time. So sometimes sometimes I get asked, hey, Jenna, what's a really good average session duration for my website? I say, hey, we got to check out and see what your other metrics look like. When someone's on your site for 2 minutes and 47 seconds in this case, an average user is making it to over 7 pages per session. That tells me people are finding what they're looking for. They're clicking through your website and they're getting tons of visibility either to products or services. If I saw people are on the website for 2.5 minutes, yet we're only making it to like 1.3 pages per session, I'd be a little bit concerned what was going on, because why are they spending so much time on that page? Why am I not moving them around the website to get to know me? So you can kind of start to tell a little bit of a story. Next, you've kind of determined that quality might be an issue. Users aren't staying on your website long enough. So break it down a little bit further to figure out what your actual action is. I recommend by looking at it based on channel. So if you see your direct users have low quality metrics, chances are it's a spam issue. The reason I know that is direct traffic is people that type in your URL specifically or already have it saved in their search engine. So that way we know that it's probably not going to be a legitimate user if they're on your website for under a second, for example. We can start to clean up your data to get you better, meaningful results if you filter out that spam traffic. Next, my favorite, organic, which is really search engines, so Google specifically. If users are not making it, or if users that are making on your website have lower quality metrics, you got to figure out what you're targeting on Google. Are you reaching the ideal user? Leaning back to my past example, we were reaching a residential audience, not a commercial, which is why leads weren't coming in. For paid search, it all comes down to targeting. When you are paying for those clicks, whether it's on Google or on Meta for Instagram and Facebook, they give you a lot of different targeting options that make sure you're narrowing down exactly who you want to get in front of. For example, location. So if you only want to target people in a specific city or state, you could target a specific age demographic. You can even target sometimes people's job titles. So for example, if you only want to work with executives, you can target people that make X amount of dollars a year. So you can get very targeted. Next, for email marketing, you are sending to people that you've already worked with. So I suggest auditing your list. If you're getting low engagement, bad metrics, maybe those lists are old and those users just aren't necessarily relevant anymore. Lastly, social media, audit your profiles. Start to put together a story on why are these users not interacting with my website? Am I not in front of the right people? Or do I need to be posting more interactive posts that make people want to get to my website? There's a lot of options you can audit there. So with Google Organic being my favorite, I wanted to talk about how you really audit the quality on Google, because it can be a little bit tough. So my favorite all-time tool is called Google Search Console. It is free, so I recommend if you don't have an account, you go and get one set up right away. As long as you have Google Analytics, it's also an incredibly easy setup. All you have to do is hit verify and you will have access to this tool. I like to refer to Google Search Console as you get to take a peek inside Google's brain. What I mean by that is you get to audit the performance of your website, they give you technical insights, and they show you what pages are and are not showing up on Google. So bringing this back to a current client that we have on a marketing retainer, this client specializes in commercial and residential cleaning services. I can see in the screenshot the top clicks that they've received over the last 6 months, the first one being garage floor cleaning services. How I go about auditing if this is a good quality keyword I want to show up for is I consider the intent. I know that if someone was Googling garage floor cleaning, maybe they're looking at products or maybe they're looking at a way to do it. But when I see that service added on, I know those users are interested in purchasing something, which is why this is the exact keyword I would want my client to show up for. When we are getting users that are already to the point in the sales funnel that they know they're ready to buy, that's time to meet those users on Google, which is an awesome SEO tactic. Again, you can go through every single query and determine if things are going well. If you're this client, you're happy, but this can also show the opposite. For example, I was auditing a client's website and they did professional services, yet they had a really popular blog for quinoa, actually. So a lot of the users that were making it to their website from Google were looking at quinoa recipes. Did those users bring value to that client? Not necessarily, which is why there is a difference in quality versus quantity metrics, which is why this process is so important and valuable to use. Next, let's talk about how quality scores are impacted by the user experience on your website. Shannon?
Another huge piece that really plays into this is the impact of the user experience. So you could be driving traffic to your website all day long, have really successful campaigns going, have paid ads going, social media, all of that can be working. But if people are coming to your website and they're not actually having the experience that they're looking for, it doesn't even matter. That means that you're spending money really toward nothing. So making sure that the interactivity of your website is really successful is highly important. Jenna mentioned impressions and things and site visitors and all of that, and how really if you can have the highest amount of site visitors, and if someone tells you that that is a great metric because you're generating all of these people to the website as leads, that's an incomplete truth, because getting them there is first step, but actually getting them to convert is what qualifies as getting that lead really coming in as that conversion. So how does UX impact the metrics? User experience is kind of this big, robust idea about how people are able to interact with the website, which comes into the visuals, the hierarchy of the text, how everything is set up to be really nurturing a quality experience for your users. So if that site performance and load time is not effective, then people are going to jump off of the website. If I have to log into your website and I'm just waiting for it to load, or I can't see the content that I need to, or I'm trying to click something in your navigation and it's just not going, or there's things that are obviously broken, such as like images that haven't populated or anything like that, I'm just going to go to one of your competitors to be able to find what I'm looking for, because I'm going to lose trust and kind of have some credibility shots at you if you're not really delivering that kind of a quality performance there. Another thing to consider is that 5-second first impressions. So your homepage is really important, as is every single landing page or service page that you're directing your clients to as kind of their first entry point into your website. You have maybe 5 seconds for them, especially as we kind of get into the new ages of sort of that TikTok attention span. People are making snap judgments in seconds. And if you're not able to show them that immediately, we're quality, we have spent time on this, you're in the right place, my content is telling you you've landed in the right location for the problem that you are trying to solve, I have spent time making quality design so that you can really easily navigate where you need to go, my navigation is clean where you can tell exactly what my services are and how I'm able to help you, and I have call to actions all over the website that are really guiding you through that experience. That is going to get a lot more conversions than something where I'm floundering around the website to figure out where the information I'm looking for lives. And so it becomes something where having that kind of 5-second first impressions, what you're having at the top of these pages and kind of that hero image and that header content is very important, as is the hierarchy of information. Like I said, there are people who have a little bit shorter attention spans or simply do not like reading content. And we need to make sure that we're getting our message through, whether it's someone who likes to skim a website or someone who likes to actually read through all of the details. So it's a very fine balance about how much information you provide, but also making sure that we're giving that hierarchy to things. So this is where some SEO content comes into play, where we're talking about having H1 and these indicated headers that help us divide up the content in ways that are very visually appealing. So when I'm landing on a website, if I just scroll through, I can still tell exactly what you do, and I can tell how to take the next steps because you have big, beautiful headers that are really concise and telling me exactly what that paragraph is about. I can read more if I want to, but I do not have to. And your calls to actions are nice, beautiful buttons where I can clearly tell exactly where that's going to take me next, and that that's what you want me to do so that I'm able to engage with your services, whether I want to spend that time reading or not. Of course, continuing to have the information available for those who do want to dive deeper is why we have evolving content strategies that really just go on for perpetuity. So you're always adding more for people to explore and engage with your website to create that really quality experience, but making sure that no matter what, it is kind of that snap judgment, instant gratification. I know what I'm doing. I know how you're going to help me, and I know how to communicate with you to take that action. Then last is having that search engine optimization, that on-page and technical SEO. So we talked a little bit about that user experience on the front end, but also making sure that you have your metadata set so that people are even able to find your website in the first place on those search engines, making sure that you have things categorized so you're able to enter into the page that you're looking for, and really creating the path of least resistance for your users. And that goes deeper into the purpose of the user experience. And I cannot emphasize enough, build for the user, not for the business. And this is something that we really like to dive into with our clients. Oftentimes, as a business owner or a business leader, you're coming with goals in mind about what you would like to communicate, what you think is most important, and really just saying, oh, I love that we do branding. I just want to push branding all the time. But truly, people are probably coming to us for websites and marketing. Then I really need to think about that user experience, not necessarily what I want to say. Of course, it all plays together. Everything that you think is important about your website should live there, but it's about how we prioritize and arrange that content to create a really quality user journey. And so the way this leads into the actual metrics here is how long are we keeping people engaged on the website and how are we leading them through to actually convert? So that we're seeing you're landing on our website, you're spending a little time with the content, you're exploring multiple pages to show that you care about these other pieces that we do, and you're making it to that content page or whatever our final call to action is, or even adding something to your cart and making that purchase so that we're able to see that these metrics are effective and that our user experience is good enough to get people through all the way. So users are going to jump off of your website for a number of reasons. And this is kind of a quick hit list, but if they don't know where to go next, I don't know how to take action. I don't know how to contact you. I don't know how to add something to my cart. I'm just going to go to another website. If the page takes too long to load, I'm impatient. I'm not going to wait. There is a competitor website that's going to load, so that's where I'm going to go. If the functionality breaks the page and I'm getting 404 errors, I'm trying to dive deeper into more about this service, but I can't get to the content, that's the end of my journey there with you. If your site is not ADA compliant, which now can have some legal ramifications, then it means it's not accessible for every user. And so if I have some sort of like a visual impairment or a disability and I'm not able to engage with your content, I'm simply going to go somewhere else. And then lastly, if your website is ugly, it's a little harsh to say it like this, but truly people are gauging your professionalism and the quality of your work based on the quality of your website. If this is my first interaction with you, I'm looking for it to be something that you have spent time on, that you have spent time educating me on your services, telling me how you help, and leading me through a quality experience that gives me a hint at what it's actually like to work with you. And again, this list goes on and on and on, but it truly does impact your metrics for you to have this kind of quality user experience and effect. So I'll pass back to Jenna to dive back into the metrics that relate to this.
Yeah. So to kind of tie this in a bow, if you are on a website that's taking too long to load, as Shannon alluded to, you'll probably leave. When those users come on your site and leave, that's really going to affect your average session duration because it's going to shoot it way down if there's enough users that actually do it. That's going to tell you there's a problem. I like to go start looking at those top landing pages to see if maybe there's something just wrong with this page. Maybe it broke overnight. That's a really good starting point. But using these metrics to guide where to start looking is going to be key for that next part, for that next chapter. All right, next. So let's say you look in all of your data, you say, my users are definitely who I want on the site. They are taking the actions I want on the site, yet there's just not enough of them. At some point, it is about casting a wide enough net of users and making sure you're always thinking outside the box how you can reach more that is your ideal target audience. So the metrics we use to really hold this accountable is sessions. So this is when someone comes to your website, it doesn't matter how many pages they go to, that is one single session. Views is the amount of pages they go to. This is really important because let's say you have 2,000 users on your website, but they go to 10,000 pages. That's awesome. Well, what if the next month those same users go to 20,000? Are you likely to squeeze more leads when those users aren't going up? Not likely. So you also want to make sure you're watching that user metric go up because that's going to show the pool of leads that you actually have to kind of fish out of. So you've determined maybe quantity is an issue. Same thing with quality. You're going to go look at the channel and think about what you can do to really start to improve it. So for direct users, again, it's people who have your URL saved. They've probably worked with you in the past, or they really like your website, but you want to give them a reason to come back. Something that Evolve System does is we put out blogs twice a month so that our users really do keep us top of mind, that they're able to come and educate themselves with the content that we put out. Organic, you want to start auditing pages and strategizing tactics and how you can improve that reach. So for example, I'm a dog lover. I have a black lab here at home. Let's just say that I'm running a dog adoption agency, yet I have one landing page that only targets dog adoption. Imagine how much bigger of a net I would cast if I had a puppy adoptions, black lab adoptions, if I started to go after all these keywords that really do lead me to meeting different users on Google. That's going to cast my net not only from just people who want a dog, but who want all these different ways I can talk about dogs and meet that many more people. So that's just one easy, specific example for SEO. For paid search, you can adjust your targeting. Sometimes you're going to see, wow, I'm paying $5 for that click. Maybe I want to go after some keywords that are a little bit more competitive. They might not be the same quality of users, but you will get more of them in. You can do that, or you can go the other route of just doubling your budget. Let's say your paid ads are kicking butt, they're bringing in a great return on investment. Well, you might want to start increasing that budget so you can just attract more of that same quality of user. For email lists, you want to grow your lists by using other channels. For example, we use our social media a lot to try and grow our email list. If you like this content we're posting, let us get that right to your inbox. Or when we are working with new potential clients of like, hey, we'd love to keep you updated on our current webinars that are going on. Can we get you signed up for this list? There's all sorts of ways to grow that list, but those users you already know, hopefully enjoy working with you and are going to engage with your content. Lastly, social media, a lot of it is increasing the activity and making sure you're doing it with intentionality. We all know those websites that kind of post just about the holidays. Is that necessarily going to bring in leads? No. But if you put together a really strategic content calendar that talks about your products, your services, maybe your company events, maybe some problems you solve, that's how you're going to start getting a lot more engagement out of those users that actually make it to your website to convert. All right, so that is the quantity versus quality method. Again, when you go through it, try and keep it as simple as your head as possible of, am I meeting the right users on my website? Are they taking the actions I want them to take? And am I casting a wide enough net? I promise you'll see some success that way. Next, we're going to talk about best practices for interpreting data. That entire method we just went through really does go off the basis that you know how to read your data and that you can find some meaningful information out of it. So I just want to go over a few ways that made it easy for me to start interpreting data. The first one is always review your data with a purpose. I thought this was the funniest thing to be told as a newbie, being like, hey, don't go into Google Analytics unless you want to search for something. But you can go spend hours in analytics and then you leave and you wonder, what the heck did I just look at? So you want to make sure you're going in. And my suggestion is to have that list of KPIs handy that you and the rest of your company really care about. Speaking of KPIs, KPIs are key performance indicators. These are metrics that should really be in line with your current business objectives and goals, not necessarily just marketing. As much as I love talking about impressions and clicks, is that necessarily moving the business forward? Not necessarily. So the KPIs I really like to keep track of are like the number of leads. What is that conversion rate? Am I making sure that the amount of users making it to my website are actually converting? There's higher level key metrics that can make you get a screenshot and know what's going well and what's not on your website. The other thing is use tools to set you up for success. When I say only track like 3 to 10 KPIs, that's not me telling you not to track anything. There's value in tracking maybe less important goals or less important actions people can take on a website. For example, file downloads. I work with a ton of manufacturing clients, and those file downloads can be buying signals as to what products are getting the most engagement. Is that necessarily a KPI I'm going to look at all the time? But is that a KPI I'm going to review on a monthly basis to be like, hey, I saw a huge spike up for this product this month. Did this convert into leads, or do we need to do something different to that product spreadsheet to allow for more leads to come in? That's how you can start to use that data. Next, audit your data in a 90-day period. There is no rule of thumb. If you Google right now, how many days should I audit my data? They probably won't come up with 90, but my reason for this is due to fluctuation and consistency. Week to week, even month to month, so much can change. When we're considering sales cycles, we're considering numbers of days in a month and just the human element. We want to make sure that the data we're getting isn't like too much of a knee-jerk reaction. So for example, let's say we're comparing December to January. When you're getting ready for Christmas, your brain is in a totally different space than when you're getting ready for the first of the year. Maybe you're starting new goals. This also does relate to businesses, especially for seasonality businesses. Make sure when you can compare it year over year, which leads me to my next best practice. Shannon, you had a really good example of this year over year comparison. Do you mind sharing?
Yeah, so I was talking about with year over year comparisons. This really often aligns with the way that we structure our businesses. Typically, we're looking at kind of that first part of the year to be setting new goals, setting our new metrics, and really looking at numbers from the past year in a variety of areas. So oftentimes this aligns with your revenue team, or if you're using EOS, this will align with what your L10 is kind of planning for your vision, and making sure that everything is going to kind of align with this big picture so that you're able to set goals that actually have substance instead of just saying, well, it would be great if we were able to achieve XYZ this year. Rooting that in data is going to make it a lot more logical. So looking at things year over year just makes it much more of an apples to apples comparison, especially if it's like Jenna said, if you have a seasonal business where things really certainly ramp up over a certain month. If July is always your best month, comparing July of this year to July of last year is going to show where your growth has actually come from, versus comparing June to July, knowing July will always be better than June, isn't going to tell you as much.
Thank you, Shannon. Next is don't overanalyze. I can pick on the younger version of myself for sure. When I figured out my love and fascination for data, I would build reports on reports on reports. And of course, those reports could be insightful and very beneficial, but the amount of time that I spent actually auditing versus moving the needle was very different. So something you want to do is when you go in to your data with a goal, it can make sure you keep your priorities straight and that you're actually going for a bigger reason other than to just audit your data. This brings me to my next point of a really common misconception I actually hear all the time is you're spending a lot of time in Google Analytics. How is that going to help my marketing? The really unfortunate answer is it's not going to affect your marketing at all. Google Analytics is a tool for you to learn what your next steps are, for you to learn how users are interacting with your website, but the actual auditing of the tool does not affect your numbers because users don't see that stuff. They see the impact you're making on the website. Instead, use Google Analytics, spend your time on it so you're allowed to have focused next steps and actions, kind of what's described in this presentation of exactly my SEO traffic isn't going that well. Where do I start? Well, this landing page does great. This one doesn't. Let's start figuring out why one works well and one doesn't. All right. Last section of today is best practices for accessing your data. So in order to go over these best practices to start doing the quantity versus quality method, you really do need to start looking at your own data. So step one is confirming you have tracking set up on your website. Google Analytics is the most common, and it's definitely the one we recommend. The way I check to make sure potential clients are coming on board with Google Analytics setup is a tool called Wappalizer. This tool is an extension you can add to your web or to your search engine. So I use Chrome. And basically you just turn it on and it's going to let you know if Google Analytics is on the site based on the screenshot. You can use this for any website, fun fact. So let's say you're on a competitor's website, you think it's a beautiful website. You can even see what platform they're on. In the screenshot, you can see we use WordPress because that is our preferred platform, but it gives you a lot of competitive intel as well. Next, accessing your analytics. So the best way to do it is truly just to Google Analytics login. It is Google's tool, so of course they're going to prioritize their tool on Google. It's always going to be the top result. As soon as you click on it, you're going to need a Google address to log in. And if you don't have one, that's a sign that access might be a little bit tough to get into. This can be a really big challenge for some companies, especially when there's a lot of turnover. So my answer to trying to eliminate this fear of losing access is to make sure your company has a Google Analytic email that's shared or have multiple administrative users on the Google Analytics account, because once you lose access, Google isn't super helpful at getting it back for you. So typically I tell my clients, let's cut your losses. Let's start a new account for you. Let's get you a new login. It is really nice to have that historical data, but is the hours of trying to recover an old account worth just collecting new data? In most cases, it's not. But starting a new account is not difficult. It's just a little code you add to your website, and voila, you're creating a new account in Google Analytics. So step 3, once you're in analytics, where do you start? GA4 made this quite challenging, not only for marketers, but for business owners. But they've been making tons of updates. So if you tried it 2 years ago when they first rolled it out, give it another shot. I swear it's a little bit more user-friendly. But the first place to access is reports. These reports are out of the box reporting. They go over traffic, they go over leads, they go over a few insights, but you don't need to be a marketer to understand these, I'd argue, or to get them set up and the ball rolling. This is all done for you. The next item is a little bit more complicated, but it for sure has its benefits, is the Explore tool. These are custom reports that you set up in Google Analytics. Why they're so beneficial, and I like to use them on occasion, is you can reference them back. So let's say your team comes up with those 3 to 10 KPIs that you really care about. You could set up these reports so that anytime you log in, the reports are already set up for you. You can just maybe change the date range, but it makes it a really simple process to keep up with your KPIs. And then lastly is custom reporting. Evolve Systems has their own custom report we're going to take a peek at today, as well as all other agencies. I'm going to toot our own horn that these reports are a game changer. They make it so much more simple to find your data, get the meaningful data out of it, rather than having to log in GA4 and navigate that platform. So what our reports cover are your leads. We custom set these up based on your business objectives. We talk about traffic and channel insights, video analytics. I cannot express enough how important video is in 2024. It's truly a game changer for marketing and has been for quite a long time. But if you're not keeping track of your video metrics, I highly suggest you start. Scroll tracking, file downloads, Search Console insights, and Google Ads. Something else that's really beneficial about these reports is we pull in multiple data sources. Google Analytics is really Google's information about how users are navigating your website, not necessarily what's going on in the ads or what's going on the search engine results page. So that's how these can be helpful. So without further ado, I will pull up one of these. What else is really great about this tool specifically is it updates monthly. So on the 1st of August, we're going to get all of July's data. What else is great is they're interactive. So as I mentioned during this whole presentation, the value of breaking things down, you can start to look at just Google Organic, for example, to say, how are my marketing initiatives going? Is what I'm doing worth my time? And so on. The other thing I want to note today is I have scrambled this data to the point that it's unrecognizable for all of our clients and our own personal data. I really wanted to respect the privacy of our clients, so nothing you see here might make sense to some degree when you pair them together because it's probably a different data source. All right, so talking about the overview page, we have our key metrics, which we have our quality metrics, our quantity metrics, so we can really start to tell that story of what's going on with the website. Next, we have conversion trends. A lot of people get into marketing for leads, so it's really important to keep those leads top of mind. Is my marketing bringing in that return on investment? What exactly are those leads? Is it contact forms? Is it email? What's the preferred way that you would like to receive your leads? We then start to talk through how that's going. Session trends, this is the yearly sales cycle that we were talking about. If you are always really busy in January, for example, like Shannon said, we want to make sure that we're comparing January to January versus comparing a slow month to a really busy month. It's just not going to get you that meaningful of data. Next, we have a page based on conversions. So this is a deeper dive on exactly those leads that you want to talk about. It breaks it down based on the channel source. So let's say you're investing a ton of money in paid search. This would make it very evident that maybe it's not working because there aren't a lot of leads coming out of it. This just starts to paint those pictures a little bit more granular than looking at your data as a whole. What else it has is that conversion rate. I love this metric. I think it's such a nice metric, that 1.3% on this, for example, of who's converting. It depends on the industry what's a good conversion rate. It can be anywhere from 1% to 4%. I like to keep in mind how expensive the products are, because we know the more expensive products are, the more decision making that really needs to go in, the more research. So typically your conversion rate's going to be a little lower. Now, if you're in B2C and maybe you have some really cheap products and people tend to land on your website and buy your product, your conversion rate is going to be much higher. So there's a lot of research that can be done to tell you if this conversion rate is positive and if it's something that maybe needs to be looked at and adjusted if you're not converting the correct amount of users. Without going through every page, because that would take quite a while, if you are interested after this webinar, please reach out to Shannon. She'd love to set up a demo with you and I to go through this granularly, but I'm just going to pop around on a few more key pages. The next one being file downloads. I brought up one of our target audiences that we really like to work with, our manufacturers. We have so much valuable conversations on this page to really talk about those buying signals, what's working, what's not working. I did hide these URLs for privacy, but you can get the account or the count of files downloaded, exactly what page they're on, what specific files are being downloaded. Google Search Console, I pulled up that tool a while ago. If you don't want to learn a new platform, this reporting will automatically pull you in. They'll be able to give you the impressions that you're being seen on Google, the clicks, your change month to month, along with your trends. Video analytics, again, we've talked about this a little bit today, but you can start analyzing the different videos. This would definitely fill out for every single video. How many people are watching it? How many sessions was that part of? How long were people watching your videos, for example? There's a lot we can do to configure this exactly to your company. The last page I wanted to touch on is Google Ads. So when you're putting money into Google Ads, you are for sure expecting a return on investment. This makes it very transparent where your dollars are being spent and if they're being used effectively. So it has the campaign, the amount of clicks, the amount of impressions, and then how many conversions you're actually getting. We then break that down further to talk about the specific conversions. We have this little interesting chart that shows you how effective you are based on your budget. Should you be spending more? So if I pick a random date range, oh, it didn't quite work. I can get it working some other time. But that's what this report is really used as a tool, not so much a PowerPoint that you review every single month. Alrighty. So with that,
So I know we just covered a lot of information. Jenna is just a wealth of knowledge, and you're probably wondering how you're going to be able to capitalize on this information. But do not worry, we are going to share the recording of today's conversation so you can hear word for word what we've said, as well as access to the slide deck so that you're able to download that, read a little bit more into those pieces. And then, of course, we will also share that demo link to Evolve's custom reporting so that you can poke around in there and see what we qualify as meaningful data and kind of how that organized and how everything really correlates to one another. So watch your email for access to that. Feel free to forward anything and share with the rest of your team. But at this point, we will now be opening the floor for questions. So if you would like to tap into Jenna's brain right now with any questions about how to navigate your data and decision making on any of the topics that we've covered, feel free to raise a hand, submit a question in the chat, or you can also just pop off of your mute and ask us directly. I can certainly start us off with a question that a couple of clients have been asking me. To get all of this underway, Jenna, if we don't already have Google Analytics on the website, how long does it take, first of all, to get it on your website and working? And then how long does it take for you to really collect enough meaningful data to take some of these actions?
Really good question. I would say it's as fast as you want to move. You can get a tracking code on your website and an analytics account set up in under an hour. Now, if you want to set up a ton of custom tracking, for example, you have 50 different forms on your website, that might be a little bit different setup time depending on the complexity of the forms and how in depth you want to go. So I would argue anywhere from a day to a week, I'd say, for setting up an account. What was the follow-up question?
For how long it takes for the meaningful data to start appearing so that we're able to take some action.
Well, in a perfect world, I would say 90 days, but that's way too long to sit. So 30 days should give you enough data to really start to grasp what's going on the website. We can start using that quantity versus quality method of, is there enough people on the site? Or maybe do we need to start focusing on the quantity?
And how does that work for e-commerce? Am I able to track things like specific products and things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. When it comes to e-commerce, there's a ton you can track. You can look at page views, which definitely does correlate to user engagement, but you can also start to track button clicks. Depending on what's on your product pages, a lot of our clients have like TDSs. Sometimes we have CAD models that clients can play with and they can download. You can start to custom track all those buttons differently and have them pre-fill into that report about what's effective and what's not. What else you can do is you can say, hey, I thought that CAD tool was going to be such a hit for our clients, but no one's using that. That's time to go look at the user experience and see if there's something impeding that user in that user's way to help them use that really cool new tool that you just spent time and money to put on your website.
In that same vein, do you recommend testing things, like just sort of putting things out there to collect data and see how they do? Or is it more something where you recommend having a really refined strategy before you put any content out?
That is such a good question. Um, I think it kind of depends on how much visibility you're thinking that page is going to get. If you want to do a test on your homepage, I would say you better have a darn good reason why you're going to test it on your homepage. But if you want to do a test on an orphan page that you're going to serve to a handful of users, I'm all for testing. I think there's no way to know how your users are going to react to your tools without seeing what they like, what they don't like. But of course, testing with verification. Marnie, our owner of this company, has always taught me to test with verification. Test it yourself. Or if you weren't sure that it's working, maybe send it to someone that isn't so close to the topic. So let's say you work for a company and you think your website is the best thing ever. Maybe have your husband, wife, sister, brother, best friend go look at it and get their perspective, because it is hard when you're so close to something that you poured your time, energy, tears into, maybe to realize that there is a lot more space for improvement. So get other people's opinions as well.
We talked a lot about the importance of conversion and kind of how we're able to track things like emails and downloads and all of that. What if my business is really based on getting phone calls in and that's the way that I generate leads? How would I be able to track something like that and make sure that I'm actually making an effort that's being effective?
Yeah. That's a question that a lot of clients face. And I like to recommend a tool called CallRail. We can absolutely track the amount of clicks that your phone call is getting on a website, but what we can't track is once that phone call leaves the website. Once it goes to their actual iPhone, we don't know how long the average session duration was, if it was a spam caller, if it was a little kid calling you, we don't know that. So what CallRail does is it's an extension on that number that lets the phone call go through. It tracks what traffic source it came from, so we can start to see what traffic sources is being the most impactful for your calls. And then once the user hangs up, it actually gives you time to rate how that call went and if it was a legitimate lead. That data then passes into your report, and you can say, I had 25 phone calls last month. 18 of them were legitimate, 3 of them were questions, and the other handful were spam. That way you can start to get meaningful information on if those phone calls are actual leads or if they're just maybe your current clients calling for some support.
Any other questions from anybody else? Jenna, you talked about the importance of the page speed and performance of your website. If you There's sometimes like a little bit of a lag time where you're able to really see that the page isn't performing well, but how do I know if my website is having performance issues?
One, I always just go test it yourself. Um, the amount of times that you think your website is set up correctly, but then maybe you go check a mobile device or you switch from Chrome to Safari, for example, it can really show that little errors can cause large problems. For page speed specifically, other than user testing, I like to use a tool called Page Speed Insights. It's Google's tool. They use it for their core web vitals testing. And this Page Speed Insight tools breaks down a score for you. So it does it from red if you're not doing very well, yellow if you're doing okay, or green. Those 3 colors really should give you a benchmark. Don't let those scary low red numbers scare you because I see them all the time. But if you're in the red, it does tell you there's space for improvement. What else this tool is going to do is it's going to give you suggestions on how you can start to improve your page speed right away. A common one is how images are loaded on your website. So if images are really large files, that's going to affect the page speed. So you're actually going to want to dumb them down to thumbnails or maybe a different format. The format that we currently push is called WebP images, which is different from JPEG because they load much quicker. The other thing is you can start getting into some pretty complex items called like lazy loading. So what that does is it loads the images while they load on the page. So that way it doesn't impact the user experience and that user doesn't have to wait for an entire page to load. So there are tons of options to make sure that you're fixing all these technical items on the back end. There's tons of tools that really do set you up for success.
If I wanted to have a custom report configured for my website, how would we go about figuring out which metrics are most important?
I would start with a discovery session to really talk about what's your business goals. Is it just leads or is it leads for specific product or service? What you want to do is you want these KPIs to really tell the story of why things are working or not working for your business objectives. Large numbers are great. For example, I had 45 leads, but what does that really mean? I had 20 contact us forms, which I know those are warm leads. I had 20 product inquiries, which those are hot leads because it's clients who already are familiar with me, for example. And then I had 5 phone calls. Maybe I know phone calls aren't as strong for me. So that is a way to start analyzing that data just a little bit differently.
I had a client talking about how they've been working with a marketing partner who keeps providing them with only good data and mostly leaning on impressions, basically saying that we're getting all of these impressions, so we are being successful. Can you explain how that isn't like a full perspective?
Yeah. So, what impressions are referring to is the amount of eyeballs that your search engine results are getting. So, for Evolve Systems, we obviously do marketing. So, when people search marketing near me, I want our website to show up. When that shows up on Google, that's the impression they're talking about. Impressions are really important because you cannot get a click without an impression. But if your marketing agency is only telling you about the eyeballs making it to your website, you got to ask them, what are you doing to get those eyeballs on my website? And how are they actually going to convert into a lead? I've heard horror stories, unfortunately, of people only focusing on Google for SEO when you're really missing half the battle. I mean, half the battle is getting them to the website. But again, if they're not the right users, they're never going to convert into a lead, which maybe that's not the best use of your time for SEO.
You gave the example of the dog breeder website where it would be advantageous for them to start breaking out into more specific landing pages, such as puppy breeders or black lab breeders, or getting kind of into really granular, detailed keywords with dedicated pages. How expansive should a website become? How many landing pages should exist, or what's kind of the process for how to figure out when to stop, if ever?
That's a really good question. I don't think I have an actual answer for you because I'm going to say it depends. What I would say, you're reaching that threshold is when you start to cannibalize keywords. So, what I mean by that is if you have two pages that go after the exact same keywords, you're actually hurting Google because you're making Google determine which page is better, which one is going to be a better user experience. Maybe the organization prioritization on this website isn't so great. So you really want to make sure if you're creating separate pages, they do have different targeting strategies. I have yet to run into a website that has ran out of opportunity. I think there's always opportunity for more because you can really start to think about a sales funnel. When people enter that sales funnel at awareness, there's all these different categories and topics you can touch on. And as they go through the sales funnel, there should continue to be a wider net of things you can go after. So let's say you're a manufacturing company that does valves. Well, there's only so many transactional keywords you can go after. So what if you start having a blog about the best use of their valves or problem solving that people have done in the past? You can then start to open people's eyes about other ways to use the valves, other maybe impressive projects that they've worked on, and you can start to give people a different way to use your products, opening the mind. So I would argue it is limitless. You can create as many pages as you would like, but make sure you're doing it for a specific purpose, not just to create more pages.
You mentioned confusing Google with certain content. How is Google reading my website?
Oh gosh, Google reads your website every day. It's called a crawl budget. That is also something you can check in Search Console. Crawl budget's super important because it's the number of pages that they audit your website on a daily basis. Another misconception is that Google's fair and that it treats all of their websites the same. That is absolutely not true. They prioritize websites that have credibility, that have healthy websites. So it's really important to make sure that you're putting on not only a good experience for your users, but for Google to make sure that they serve your pages the way you want them to be served.
Thank you, Jenna. We have 2 minutes left here. Is there anyone else that has a question? Okay, then we're going to wrap up. Like I said, we will be following up with you with an email that has both the recording and the slide deck access, as well as giving you that link to play with our demo reporting so you can kind of explore that area as well. Thank you all for attending. I really appreciate you being here, and for the questions that were submitted to us, thank you so much. So we will be following up soon, and watch for our next webinar. Everyone have a wonderful week.
Thank you so much.